Have you ever felt the paralyzing dread of discovering you're not alone when you were absolutely certain you should be? That moment when every instinct screams danger, but your mind desperately searches for rational explanations that simply don't exist? Tonight's stories will take you to that edge, where childhood innocence collides with unthinkable terror, where trust becomes a deadly mistake, and where the line between helper and predator blurs in the most horrifying ways imaginable. Growing up, my circle of friends, 6 of us in total, had established a ritual we considered sacred. Whenever someone's birthday rolled around, we'd converge on their home for a celebration that stretched deep into the night. John's birthday held particular significance because his family owned this enormous estate, complete with a separate structure they used for guests. A standalone building transformed into our private kingdom for the night. His parents had gone all out, streamers cascading from the ceiling, balloons clustered in every corner, tables overflowing with candy and chips, even a projection system they'd installed so we could watch whatever films we wanted on the wall. The beauty of it was the freedom, no adults hovering over us, dictating bedtimes or monitoring our sugar intake. We could push boundaries in ways that felt thrilling at 11 years old. That particular night unfolded like countless others before it. We gorged ourselves on junk food until someone, I think it was Marcus, launched a Twizzler across the room, and within seconds we descended into full-blown chaos. Red licorice whips flew through the air like missiles. The entire floor became a carpet of scattered candy. Eventually, the sugar rush propelled us outside. We ran through the darkness playing tag, our shouts echoing across the sprawling lawn. The property was massive, and in the moonlight, every shadow seemed alive with possibility. When we finally stumbled back inside, breathless and sweating despite the cool night air, something nagged at the back of my mind. The floor looked different somehow, cleaner. There had been significantly more candy scattered around when we'd left. I was certain of it. Whole bags of sweets that had been torn open and dumped out seemed diminished now. I mentioned it to the others, but they barely glanced up from whatever they were doing. John actually laughed, telling me it looked identical to him, that I was seeing things. Against my better judgment, I let it go, pushed down that uncomfortable feeling and rejoined the group. The hours bled together. We stayed awake talking nonsense, debating which girls at school liked which boys, the kind of conversations that seemed monumentally important at that age. I remember drifting off while their voices still murmured in the background, their words becoming indistinct as sleep pulled me under. I've always been someone who sleeps heavily once I'm out, so when something jolted me awake in those early morning hours, it took several disorienting seconds to piece together what had happened. A bowl had fallen. That's what my brain registered first. The crash of ceramic hitting the floor, popcorn kernels scattering across the carpet in a wide radius. The bowl had been positioned near the table's edge the previous night. Too close, apparently. My second realization was more disturbing. I was alone. Not a single sleeping bag contained a friend. The entire space stood empty except for me. I called out first John's name, then the others, one by one. My voice gained urgency with each unanswered shout. The silence that greeted me felt oppressive, suffocating. The darkness was nearly complete. I stood up, disoriented, searching for the light switch that should have been in one location, but somehow wasn't where I expected. Then I heard it. Breathing, short, rapid inhalations coming from somewhere in the room. I froze mid-step, every muscle locked in place. The sound originated from the corner, where 2 tall bookshelves had been positioned to create a small triangular dead space against the wall. Initially, relief washed over me. Obviously, this was a prank. My friends hiding, waiting for me to discover them. John had even mentioned the night before how many excellent hiding spots the guest house contained. I called out again, telling John the joke was over. He could come out now. Still nothing. The breathing continued, steady and unnervingly close. Annoyance began replacing my initial relief. Everyone knew I hated being the target of practical jokes. I'd made that abundantly clear on multiple occasions. I climbed onto the nearby couch, using the elevation to peer over the top of the shelving units. What I saw made my blood crystallize in my veins. Hair, but not belonging to any child. Gray strands mixed with patches of complete baldness. The unmistakable crown of an adult's head visible just above the shelf line. My shock caused me to lose balance. I tumbled backward off the couch, my shoulder slamming into the bookshelf hard enough to rattle its contents. The figure in that hidden space turned. Even in the darkness I could see those eyes, pale, colorless, utterly lifeless. They locked onto mine with an intensity that stopped my heart. When I screamed, the thing screamed back, not with words, but with an animal sound, primal and wrong. I don't remember the details of my escape, just running, my legs pumping faster than they ever had. Across that dark lawn toward the main house, terror giving me speed I didn't know I possessed. Behind me, silence. Whatever had been hiding in that corner didn't pursue, or maybe it did and I simply ran too fast to notice. I pounded on the main house door, barely coherent when John's parents answered. His mother wrapped her arms around me while I sobbed out an explanation. A man, hiding, in the guest house, watching us. John's father grabbed a baseball bat and sprinted toward the building. By the time he searched it thoroughly, the intruder had vanished. My friends returned maybe 20 minutes later, confused by the commotion. They decided to walk down to the lake to catch the sunrise while I slept. None of them had any idea what had transpired in their absence. We spent the rest of that night huddled in the main house, none of us speaking much, waiting for the police to arrive and take our statements. That birthday tradition ended that night. We still had sleepovers, but always within earshot of parents, always in spaces that felt secure. The authorities never identified the intruder. No leads, no suspects, nothing. For almost 12 months afterward, I couldn't sleep in my own room. Every night I'd drag my blanket into my parents' bedroom, too terrified to be alone in the dark. Even now, years later, whenever I see a space that would make a good hiding spot, a gap behind furniture, a shadowy corner, a closet door left slightly ajar, I feel that same electric jolt of fear. The certainty that something might be there, watching, breathing, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. I've never been the type who needed big celebrations. Even during my college years, when most people were desperate to find the wildest party, the loudest bar, the most chaotic scene possible, it never appealed to me. I preferred meaningful experiences with a tight circle of people I actually trusted. I'm from a rural community in northwestern Ontario, where the landscape is more forest than civilization. A few years back, this incident occurred. My father had a tradition spanning decades. Every New Year's Eve, instead of attending parties or watching fireworks, he'd gather his closest friends and head out for ice fishing. My mother never participated, and we didn't have extended family nearby, so as a kid, I'd bundle up and join him on those frozen lakes in the brutal cold. My brother would come too, along with my father's friends and their sons. Dad's gone now. My brother relocated to Chicago years ago and rarely visits, but I've maintained that tradition, especially on New Year's Eve. I couldn't tell you exactly why. There's no logical reason to continue the practice, yet something compels me to honor it. Nate and Trevor, my two closest friends, are exactly the kind of guys you'd expect to find ice fishing in Ontario. Massive builds, perpetually rough around the edges, more comfortable in wilderness than in any urban setting. Honestly, I'd describe myself the same way. The three of us had committed to keeping my father's tradition alive, which was fortunate because spending New Year's Eve alone would have been unbearable. Nate was driving that particular day. His truck was perfect for the job. 4-wheel drive, oversized tires, a bed large enough to hold all our equipment. We'd packed everything: fishing rods, tip-ups, bait buckets, a sled for transport, plus a small pop-up shelter to provide some protection from the elements. The weather forecast predicted clear skies, though in Ontario, meteorological predictions are notoriously unreliable. Still, we felt prepared for any scenario. The lake we'd chosen wasn't popular. Hidden behind dense forest growth, It remained frozen solid even during milder winters. You wouldn't stumble across it accidentally. You needed to know exactly where you were going. As Nate navigated the snow-covered back roads, anticipation built among us. There's something almost romantic about ice fishing. You, your trusted companions, the possibility of a catch. Far superior to crowding into some overpriced bar, downing watered-down drinks. When we reached the trailhead parking area, I noticed someone standing nearby, just a few meters away, dressed appropriately for winter conditions. But something about his presence felt off. He stood completely motionless, staring at our truck without moving. He'd glance down at his phone, then back up at us, then down again in a repetitive pattern. Initially, I assumed he might be another fisherman sizing us up, maybe trying to determine if we knew about good spots. But his stillness felt wrong somehow. I can't adequately articulate what triggered my unease, just instinct. I mentioned quietly to my friends that the guy was making me uncomfortable. Both looked up. Nate gave a subtle nod, acknowledging my observation. Trevor shrugged, unconcerned. Just as we prepared to start unloading our gear, the man suddenly sprinted toward us, arms flailing wildly. I rolled down my window to hear what he was shouting. He was yelling that we needed to help him immediately, that his friend had just fallen through the ice. He thrust his phone toward us, saying someone had called him about it, his voice cracking with what seemed like genuine panic. He sounded frantic, almost incoherent. Desperate, Trevor threw his door open first, and we all followed the man down the trail toward the lake. We didn't even stop to grab our proper winter gear, just rushed out in whatever we were wearing. His voice carried such urgency that it overrode any instinct to pause and think critically. The man moved so quickly we had to jog to maintain pace. As we got closer to the lake, that uncomfortable feeling intensified. He wasn't leading us toward the popular fishing spots. Instead, we were heading toward a more isolated section of the shoreline, where the ice was thickest and most dangerous. I was about to stop following when they came into view. 2 more men standing near the lake's edge. They weren't dressed for fishing. They weren't moving. They simply stood there waiting. Looking down, I noticed their hands. Both men were armed. My blood turned to ice. Suddenly, one of them shouted for us to stop. He raised his weapon, aiming directly at me. I cannot adequately describe the sensation of having a gun pointed at you. It's a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone. Your entire body understands the danger before your brain can process it. The man we'd been following turned to face us, a smirk spreading across his features. My heart plummeted. We'd been set up. Every detail had been orchestrated. The second armed man demanded Nate's keys and everything else we were carrying. We had no options. These weren't people making empty threats. Nate extracted his truck keys and tossed them over. We emptied our wallets. When I hesitated with my phone, one of them specifically demanded it. Nate claimed his was in the vehicle, which made them laugh. I've never experienced such concentrated rage. How could we have been so careless? These men held guns to our heads while I stood there with clenched fists, imagining scenarios where I could fight back, knowing they were impossible fantasies. They took everything within seconds. One drove off in Nate's truck, while the other 2 retreated into the trees, presumably to reach their own vehicle. Briefly, I considered following them, but recognized the stupidity of that impulse. We stood there freezing and defeated, until Nate pulled out his phone. He'd lied about leaving it in the truck, a quick-thinking deception that likely saved us. I don't know how we would have survived without that phone. We still had minimal service. He called emergency services and provided every detail he could remember. The dispatcher instructed us to stay put. So we huddled together for warmth, waiting for help to arrive. Fury still coursed through me. Nate was worst. He kept kicking nearby trees, shouting into the empty forest. Trevor and I couldn't calm him down. Everything had happened so rapidly. I kept replaying it, trying to understand. These people had been waiting in the middle of nowhere on New Year's Eve. It made no logical sense. I'll skip the tedious parts. We filed a police report. The officers were kind enough to drive us to Trevor's house, which was closest. As you might expect, they never caught the people who stole Nate's truck, never recovered any of our belongings. We're all still processing what happened. Trevor believes we simply encountered the wrong people at the wrong time, that we were convenient targets rather than specifically chosen. It's possible, but I have doubts. Who sets an elaborate trap for random strangers at the last minute? And why would they be waiting in such a remote location? They couldn't have guaranteed anyone would show up. I honestly don't know what to think anymore. This happened during a late-night delivery shift I was working. I lived in the Poconos, where populated areas are sparse and roads stretch for miles with nothing but dense forest on either side. I'd driven this particular route to reach town countless times, but that night was different. Dark, foggy, visibility reduced to almost nothing. I was navigating one of those tree-lined roads when someone jumped directly into my path. I slammed the brakes. The sickening thump and bump from my front end told me I'd made contact. The impact was unmistakable. I swore, pressing my palm against my forehead. The reality of what had just happened made me nauseous. I'd hit someone. I exited my vehicle and approached to assess the situation. A man lay there, wearing a black coat with the hood pulled up, motionless beside my tire. I was panicking, unable to process what to do next. What had this person been doing out here in complete isolation? Why had he jumped in front of my car? Then things became stranger. From the trees to my left, I heard someone screaming for help. A voice filled with agony, terror, desperation. The man I'd hit remained on the ground, not moving at all. I made a decision I still can't fully explain. I thought I'd only be gone for a moment. For reasons that defy logic, I decided it was acceptable to leave the injured man and investigate the screaming. I moved in that direction. I was hoping to hear another scream to guide me, but all I could detect were typical nighttime forest sounds, insects, distant animals, wind through branches. I shouted into the darkness, "Where are you?" That's when I heard footsteps, leaves crunching under someone's weight. I turned toward the sound. Through the darkness and fog, I could make out a silhouette, someone hiding behind a tree, watching me from across a small clearing. I ran back to my car as fast as my legs would carry me, constantly glancing behind to ensure no one was following. When I reached my vehicle, the man I'd hit was gone. I didn't waste time trying to figure out where he'd vanished to. I jumped into my car and drove off down the road. My heart was still racing when I arrived at the delivery address. Despite everything, I still delivered the pizza. When I rang the bell, a woman in her 40s answered. After I handed over her order and she paid, her eyes fixed on something behind me. Then she asked, "They let you guys have delivery partners now?" I didn't understand what she meant, so I asked for clarification. "You have someone with you in your car," she stated. I turned around and saw a figure sitting in my back seat. I used the woman's phone to call the police. They arrived quickly, but by the time they did, the person who'd been in my back seat had disappeared. The most terrifying part, the police found a bloody knife on my back floorboard, exactly where the man had been hiding. This memory haunts me constantly. Every single day my mind returns to it. The truly horrifying part is imagining what might have happened if I hadn't made that delivery, if I'd driven straight home instead. What this person had planned for me. These stories remind us that danger doesn't always announce itself with obvious warnings. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, in corners we don't think to check, in strangers who seem to need help, in the moments when we let our guard down because everything seems normal. The children at that sleepover had no reason to suspect someone was watching them. The men heading out for a New Year's tradition never imagined they'd become victims of an elaborate trap. The delivery driver was simply doing his job when he became prey. What unites these experiences is the fragility of safety, how quickly normalcy can transform into nightmare, how trust can be weaponized against us. If these stories resonated with you, or if they reminded you to stay vigilant in your own life, Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Share your own experiences or thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes sharing these stories is the only way we can process them and warn others. Stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the scariest thing isn't what we can see, but what we almost didn't notice until it was too late.